Well, they have the mess part right, at least. You know, I watched Bill Nye the Science Guy as a kid. It wasn't my favorite show, but I liked it. I've been watching a few of the old episodes on Netflix, and it's not as great as I remember, but still good. And it was meant as an introduction to science for kids. My teachers would play it in elementary school science class, although I still say if you're interested in science, you'll ultimately learn more, well, a lot more, by self-study than through class assignments. I was a real documentary junkie, actually, when I was in middle and high school. I only watch them on occasion now, too busy with my own projects, and this will be one of them. I'm going to make response videos to Bill Nye's Saves the World episodes, because he does leave out several pieces of the puzzle of problems facing our world. And as I spent more than 10 years, both in school and self-studying ecology and environmental science, I think I have a little more to add here. Okay, episode 1, Earth is a Hot Mess. So after an unnecessarily long bit of oohing and eyeing, Bill heats a liquid in a tube and shows us that when a liquid is heated, it expands, which is why you see the liquid going up the tube. After the skit with the panda, Bill says that most of the fuel we consume comes from ancient organisms. Coal, oil, natural gas, fossil fuels, and they contain carbon. Now, why do they contain carbon? Well, it's because all living creatures are carbon-based, and I have my own video briefly talking about the carbon cycle. When these fossil fuels are burned to generate electricity, they release the trapped carbon inside, and it's released as carbon dioxide, CO2. Now, his explanation of what greenhouse gases are and why they were given the name is correct. What happens is, sunlight penetrates the Earth's atmosphere. Some is deflected by the clouds, and also by any surface, and it doesn't have to be a solid surface. Again, those white puffy clouds will reflect sun, as does ice and snow, for example. What happens is, sunlight penetrates the Earth's atmosphere. Some is deflected by clouds, and also by any surface, and it doesn't have to be a solid surface. Again, those puffy white clouds will reflect sun. As does ice and snow, for example, which are solid. It's the reflectivity that's important here. It's called albedo. The higher the albedo of the surface, the more light and heat is a type of light, the more it will reflect. The darker the surface, the more it will absorb. This is one reason why the melting of the Earth's polar ice caps is of concern. Ice and snow are the most reflective natural surfaces, while the dark blue ocean is the least reflective, or the most light and heat absorbing. This means that the more snow and ice cover that is lost, the more quickly the rest will disappear, as there will be more dark surface absorbing more heat on the Earth's surface, and less reflective surface. However, that is far from the only thing that will occur. The Earth's climate has many factors affecting it, and the more heat the Earth's surface absorbs, the more evaporation there will be from the water, and the more energy to power storms, but that could also increase cloud cover over the Earth, which would begin to reflect more light and heat back into space. We should also remember that the Earth has gone through many time periods in its history when there had been no polar ice at all. Now, what many scientists will say is that the problem, the real concern with modern global warming, is the rate. But is it really as dangerously urgent as the panickers claim? Hard to say. Which is exactly why some, like myself, really don't like how politically motivated the science and policy has become. I'm no denier, not even really a skeptic in the global warming debates, but we must tread carefully with claiming any level of certainty in a study this complex. Now, if you recall, or if you want to go and watch the part about Venice, Italy, and then come back here, it's from about 9.5 minutes to 13 minutes into the first episode, Hot Mess. Venice was built on the water, one of the boatmen says in the episode. Unfortunately, this is one of the problems Venice has. Yeah, no joke. The water is rising and the city is sinking. Not only is Venice right on Italy's coast, with no elevation barrier against the ocean to speak of, it's built on a group of islands, and the rock that makes up those islands is limestone. It does have weathering and erosional-resistant wooden structures built into mud and clay, and the wood is elder, a type of wood known for high resistance. The problem is not the decay of the wood, however, but the water level change itself. And against that, the building materials aren't really what matters here, as even if the structures remain intact, a sunken city is not exactly habitable now, is it? So, in dealing with Venice, Italy, what information are we given? The high tide comes twice a day, and these days it can rise as much as 1 meter, around 3 feet, which is the average elevation above sea level of the city itself. And as we saw, the waters will, at times, inundate the streets and cause some pretty serious water damage. The engineering project designed to defend Venice from the rising waters is called Project Moses. And what it is a series of floodgates, 78 in all. And, well, the ingenious thing about it is that it's a simple concept and a relatively simple possible solution to a very complex problem. We'll see how well it works. They said the system was going to be fully in place in 2018, but it took 3 decades, 30 years of planning and building. And Carly Kloss tells Bill Nye that the entire project cost 5.5 billion euros, which Nye says is $1 bazillion. Okay, a bazillion is not a number, Bill. You can tell us how much this is costing our future generations. Now, it looks, in the clip, like a single row of barriers, but it's actually, and Carly says this, a system of locks, think locks like a canal, so that boats can still come in and out of the harbor. So, let's take Harley's information and do a bit of math here. Each piece is 20 meters. That's about 60 feet each. 15 to 20 pieces, floating barriers, in each gate, and there are 3 gates. This means somewhere between 45 and 60 20-meter, 60-foot long barrier pieces in all that have to be placed around the city, and the project took 30 years to design and complete. Oof. Already, I think this is a much greater undertaking than it looked like in the small video they showed us. Then, you should recall that when the tide is especially high, the people have to seal their first floors. Remember, the 3 meters, about 9 feet of water, and actually it's a little higher when the water is sealed out of some places. It has less area to spread out. The high tide comes twice a day, so the people have to sandbag and seal their first floors twice a day. The United States is supposed to be the world's leader in science and addressing issues like climate change, says Bill. If we were exporting our culture, I'm afraid it doesn't work that way, Bill. You can't force cultural changes on people who don't want to become like Western cultures. And American culture is in pieces right now. Now, as I've said before, I am no climate change or global warming denier. I definitely think it's happening. I'm not convinced that it's the great apocalypse that so many believe. But truth is, right now, I think both sides are so highly politically directed and politically engulfed to really be trusted. So, I'm going to take a different approach from either freaking out or turning a blind eye. I want to find realistic solutions. I want realist science. Then Bill Nye says his grandparents fought in World War II. It truly infuriates me, this perception that has been hammered into our heads by Western schools, that World War II was the only type of world war that could arise. That fascism was the only evil, and that the reverse, multiculturalism and over-tolerance of intolerant ideologies and agendas, could never take hold. Sadly, they have. And even science, which is supposed to be objective, is being ruined by politics and ruled by political correctness. And it shows. I find it so insulting when people talk about we gotta get our act together, and they don't even mention at all the religious and idealistic war going on right now that are tearing the most technologically advanced countries, the most free countries, or they were when people believed in them, the countries with already the best environmental standards and most capable of addressing ecological problems. It's ridiculous. All their plans and ideas for the future are going to fail, and fail quickly and hard, if we remain too cowardly to address those. Some are trying desperately to bring reason, logic, and evidence back to conversations about how to save our people and our planet. So Bill Nye then goes to talk to 3 panelists. I was planning on covering where I agreed, or at least saw their points, as well as the holes in the logic of each of the 3. But there's actually a lot for me to say and to analyze in each of their arguments. So I will soon make a separate video where I do that. To wrap up for now, let's go back to the question facing Venice. And I'll talk about global warming on larger scales in the future, but for now, let's focus on just coastal cities that are in danger from rising sea levels. As to Venice, do I think this plan, this system of Mohs barriers, will be sufficient to save the city in the long run? Short answer, no. Venice is built on virtually no elevation above sea level. 3 feet against a rising, expanding ocean is nothing. Even many coastal cities that look to be in similar danger, like Miami, Florida, is built twice that high, 2 meters above sea level at its lowest. Orlando, Florida, 25 meters. San Francisco, California, 16 meters. Honolulu, Hawaii, 6 meters, about 18 feet. Sydney, Australia, 19 meters, if what I found was about right. Barcelona, Spain, near 40 feet above sea level. Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, has a huge range in elevation, from 0 meters at the shoreline to over 1,000 meters on the mountainous region, as does Cape Town, South Africa. New York City, 10 meters. So, unfortunately, Venice is not the city we want to be using as an example for how to save coastal cities all over the world. Topographically speaking, it is just asking to be the next Atlantis.